In a completely dark room, a single lantern shines its silent power. The darkness seems to retreat, yet the beam itself remains unseen. Only the objects that cross its path become visible. Everything else stays lost in a heavy, opaque void. This paradox, seeing light without actually seeing it, is where physicist David Deutsch begins his journey into the hidden structure of reality. Michael Faraday, one of the great masters of experimental science, once said, "There is no better, no more open door by which you can enter into the study of natural philosophy than by considering the physical phenomena of a candle." Faraday looked at the flame as a small universe of natural laws. Deutsch carries that same spirit forward into the heart of quantum physics, where light stops being an ordinary phenomenon and becomes the thread that connects the visible with the invisible. In the stillness of that dark room, the lantern does more than illuminate. It reveals the limits of perception itself. We believe we see light because we witness its effects, a reflection on a wall, the outline of an object, a shimmer on a surface. But light itself, as it travels through empty space, remains unseen. It exists only when it interacts. It becomes real only when it touches something. Deutsch uses this simple scene, shown in Figure 2.1, to remind us that reality does not always present itself to our eyes. It often works beyond the reach of our senses. Light, being invisible in transit, becomes a metaphor for everything that sustains the universe yet hides from view. Laws, particles, and the parallel worlds he will later describe. An observer looking at the lantern might swear the beam flows smoothly, a continuous stream of brightness. But, as Deutsch warns, this impression is an illusion of perception. What appears as a steady ray is, in truth, a restless torrent of discrete units, photons. We are not yet ready to uncover that fact within the story, but this first experiment lays the foundation. It teaches us not to trust appearances. If we cannot see light moving, then what are we actually seeing? We see its trace. What looks like a glowing beam is merely the sum of interactions between light and matter. Between every bright point, there lies an ocean of emptiness. And in that emptiness, Deutsch tells us, dwell the secrets of everything we have yet to understand about the cosmos. In ancient philosophy, light was a symbol of knowledge, purity, and revelation. In modern thought, it also marks the boundary between what can be perceived and what cannot be measured. Faraday's science was born from observing candles and shadows. Deutsch's science observes the mathematical fabric of the multiverse. Yet the attitude is the same, to look at the simple with new eyes. Faraday marveled at how a flame transforms matter. Deutsch marvels at how light transforms reality itself. Both knew that understanding begins with observation, but true wisdom starts when we grasp that what is unseen still acts upon us. Throughout the coming experiments, that single lantern will act as a guide. It will show that the visible world is only the surface of something far greater. Every photon leaving that bulb, even before we learn to name it, carries an invisible story, a quantum decision, a possibility that becomes real only when observed. Deutsch describes this with poetic precision. Light is not an object to be looked at. It is a messenger that speaks through what it touches. Its nature is relational, not substantial. In other words, light does not exist by itself in the void. It exists only within the relationship between observer and observed. That seemingly simple idea changes everything. For if light cannot be seen until it meets something, how many realities might be unfolding right now, beyond all sight, beyond all awareness? Deutsch invites us to face this mystery with scientific humility and the open mind of a philosopher. Every beam that strikes a wall is a reminder. Reality is happening even where we are not looking. The universe may be glowing all around us, yet we see only the fraction that lets us go on living. Scientists later understood that what we call seeing is an act of interaction. A photon must collide, reflect, or scatter for our eyes to notice it. In that instant, a measurement takes place, a decision made by the universe itself. Without this contact, there is only potential, waiting in silence. Every beam, every sparkle, every shimmer is a brief handshake between existence and awareness. For Deutsch, this simple truth hides a revolution. It suggests that observation is not passive. It reshapes the world. The universe does not reveal itself fully. It reveals what it must when consciousness looks its way. Between every visible moment, reality continues weaving patterns unseen, shaping destinies that remain untouched by our gaze. Light, then, is not only illumination, it is participation. At this beginning, the lantern is no longer a mere tool of observation. It is a key. It opens an invisible door, the same one Faraday glimpsed through the flame of a candle, but now extended toward infinity. Through that door, we discover that the invisible is not what remains unseen. It is what has always been there, acting in silence, waiting to be understood. David Deutsch invites us to imagine a simple scene, almost childlike, yet filled with mystery. A lantern shines softly in a dim room, while a small frog watches in silence. As the beam fades, the glow no longer feels like a continuous stream. The frog stops seeing a solid line of light and instead perceives isolated flashes, tiny pulses that appear, vanish, and return again. That simple observation, illustrated in Figure 2.2, contains a revelation that forever changed our understanding of the universe. What humanity once believed to be continuous, smooth, and unbroken now reveals itself as fragmented into indivisible packets of energy. Each flash that the frog perceives is not a portion of light, but a complete entity, a photon. Until that discovery, science had imagined light as a wave extending endlessly, like sound or water. The human eye, accustomed to seeing the world as an uninterrupted film, reinforced this illusion. But the lantern of David Deutsch and the attentive gaze of the frog revealed something different. Light does not flow, it leaps. The universe is not a constant river, but a succession of bursts of existence. The discovery of photons shattered the continuity of classical thought. If light can be divided into minimal units, should not the same apply to everything else, to matter, to space, even to time itself? Deutsch points out that this principle, quantization, lies at the foundation of all modern physics, a rule stating that nature is not infinitely divisible, but granular, precise, and finite in its deepest structure. The frog, without knowing it, becomes the first witness of a discontinuous universe. Its animal vision cannot capture the flow between flashes, because between them there is nothing. No light, no energy, no event at all. Only a silent void waiting for the next pulse. And thus, without meaning to, the frog teaches us something about ourselves. We only perceive the moments in which something happens. Everything else, the intervals, the pauses, the silences, remains beyond our awareness. Deutsch uses this tiny creature as a mirror. Human beings, like the frog, live through a sequence of discrete perceptions. Our minds stitch fragments together to build the illusion of continuity. Yet reality, at its core, is composed of individual events that emerge and vanish with every quantum interaction. In Deutsch's words, light is the language through which the universe speaks to us, but it speaks in syllables, not in long sentences. Each photon is a complete word in the alphabet of existence. Physicists of the past believed that matter could be divided indefinitely, as though nature knew no boundaries. Deutsch revives that debate with unsettling clarity. There is a point where division ends, where substance ceases to be continuous. The same holds true for light. If we keep weakening the beam, there comes a moment when there is no slightly less light, only presence or absence, existence or void. That boundary is not merely a scientific curiosity. It marks the frontier between two worlds, the visible world of experience and the invisible world of quantum structure. Inside each photon lives a paradox. It has no mass, yet it exerts pressure. It occupies no space, yet it can travel for billions of years. It is at once a messenger of time and a seed of pure energy. Deutsch notes that when one of these photons reaches the retina of the frog, reality itself is updated. An event takes place within the tangible universe, and with it, a single, unrepeatable instant of consciousness is born. Every flash is an ontological affirmation. This exists. And every gap between flashes is a silent negation. Now nothing exists. Thus the universe beats between being and non-being, between light and darkness, in a rhythm that the human mind is only beginning to grasp. Between those flashes of light lies an invisible architecture of possibility. Every pause between photons is not emptiness, but a silent field of potential outcomes waiting for the next act of creation. Deutsch reminds us that the universe does not rest. It vibrates beneath perception, generating endless micro-events that weave the continuity we call existence. Each photon, though fleeting, contributes a rhythm to the great symphony of being. On the surface, the experiment seems trivial, yet beneath it beats a philosophical revolution. The idea of continuity, the belief that all change unfolds smoothly and without interruption, collapses. In its place arises a new vision. Reality advances through quantum leaps, small jumps that compose the whole. This discovery did not destroy the world we knew. It revealed that it had never been as we imagined. Deutsch explains it with elegant simplicity. The lantern does more than illuminate. It exposes the gaps between what we believe to be solid. The universe is not a seamless canvas, but a vibrant web of points appearing and disappearing like the notes of a cosmic melody. This understanding reaches far beyond physics. Human consciousness itself seems to echo the same pattern. Our thoughts appear one after another, separated by imperceptible intervals, yet we experience them as a seamless stream. Deutsch suggests that mind and matter might share the same quantum grammar, brief sparks of awareness pulsing through a background of stillness. In both the lantern's glow and the thinker's gaze, reality flickers into form, moment after moment. Observing that lantern, one realizes there is no essential difference between a spark of light and the human thought that perceives it. Both are brief, quantized events, limited in duration, yet capable of reflecting the infinite. This marks the beginning of the rupture with the classical view of the world. A simple frog, a lantern, and the curiosity of a physicist are enough to bring down centuries of certainty. Because the reality unveiled by David Deutsch is neither continuous nor secure. It is a mosaic of moments that exist only when they become visible. Light had always been the synonym of order, straight, predictable, obedient to geometry. Yet when physicists began to observe it more closely, they discovered that at the edges of shadows, light seemed to turn rebellious. It refused to stop where it should. It refused to draw sharp lines. It appeared to ignore the very laws that had governed it for centuries. David Deutsch recounts this phenomenon with the precision of a scientist and the voice of a philosopher facing the impossible. When a beam of light strikes a thin object such as a filament, it does not split space into two clear halves, one bright and the other dark, but creates an intermediate zone, the penumbra. That grey band, as seen in figure 2.3, is neither light nor shadow. It is an ambiguous territory where both coexist. According to classical logic, that boundary should not exist. If light travels in straight lines, why do the edges blur? Why does darkness mingle with brightness? Deutsch explains that what we witness in the penumbra is the first hint of something deeper. Light does not always follow a straight path. Sometimes it curves, bends, and disperses. The universe, even in its purest form, light, already carries within itself the mystery of chaos. As scientists refined their experiments, this rebellion became undeniable. If one places a screen with a tiny opening before a source of light, the projected image is not a neat circle the size of the hole. Instead, a wider, diffuse pattern emerges, as if the light had slipped through and then spread sideways. This deviation is known in physics as diffraction. In figure 2.4, the experiment grows more intricate. Two screens are added, each with small aligned apertures. The light passes through them, and on a third screen, at the back, the observer expects to see two bright spots, corresponding to the two openings. But that is not what happens. Instead of 2 points, a series of curved, alternating bright and dark fringes appear, like a visual code written by the universe itself. The bright zones are uneven. The shadows are incomplete. The outcome seems impossible. Light projects patterns that do not correspond to any physical form. Deutsch explains that this is one of the first moments when nature shows its dual face. Light, which until then seemed like a particle, behaves here like a wave. Each portion of the beam spreads, curves, and overlaps with other portions of itself, as if multiple versions of the same ray were acting simultaneously. When researchers replaced monochromatic light with white light, the mystery became even more beautiful. Figure 2.5 reveals that instead of a uniform pattern, the screen displayed concentric rings of color, blue, green, red, and violet, dispersed as though an invisible prism had intervened. Each color bent at a different angle, painting an ethereal spectrum that defied classical optics. Those who witness this experiment, says Deutsch, often react with awe and confusion. It is not merely a trick of light, it is a direct violation of expectation. Light ceases to be obedient. It no longer travels linearly. It no longer casts defined shadows. It refuses to obey. Yet what seems like rebellion is, in truth, a deeper form of order. Diffraction is not a whim of light, but the manifestation of subtler rules. Each bright band and every dark interval corresponds to invisible interference between possible paths. Light is not disobeying the universe. It is obeying laws we have yet to understand. Behind what appears to be disorder lies a form of symmetry so subtle that only mathematics can reveal it. Each interference pattern, each flicker of brightness and shadow, follows an algorithm written in the language of probability. Deutsch suggests that this is the true elegance of the universe, the ability to hide harmony inside apparent confusion. When light bends around an obstacle, it is not defying reason. It is expressing it in a higher form. The curves are equations in motion. The shadows, pauses in a cosmic rhythm that repeats from the smallest photon to the largest galaxy. Deutsch leads us toward a broader reflection. The borders between light and shadow resemble the limits of the human mind. We believe that reality is divided into clear opposites, visible and invisible, certain and uncertain. Yet we live perpetually in the penumbra of understanding. Light disperses just as knowledge does. It never arrives with perfect precision, always leaving margins of doubt, grey zones where interpretation bends. When one observes the coloured fringes born from the experiment, it is impossible not to feel that the universe paints with invisible brushes. Every hole, every edge, every fragment of matter becomes a stage upon which light negotiates its passage. There is no perfect straightness, no absolute shadow. Everything is mixture, dialogue, movement. Our own lives, Deutsch might say, follow a similar interference. Moments of clarity and darkness coexist, shaping the meaning of our experiences. Just as light never travels in a perfectly straight line, our understanding of reality also bends, reflects, and overlaps. The penumbra becomes a metaphor for human knowledge itself, a region where certainty and mystery are inseparable. To embrace this ambiguity is not to surrender precision, but to recognize that truth often reveals itself through contrast. In the same way light paints color through diffraction, consciousness expands through the interplay of the known and the unknown. David Deutsch compares this scene to a mirror of the scientific mind. For centuries, physicists tried to force light to behave according to human reason, but light, like reality, cannot be contained by intuition. It has its own language, one that fuses mathematical precision with aesthetic beauty, revealed only to those willing to look beyond the straight lines. Figures 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5 form a visual sequence, describing the transition from order to mystery. What begins as a simple beam casting shadows transforms into a ballet of curves, colors, and patterns, hinting at the existence of multiple simultaneous trajectories. Here, Deutsch begins to lay the groundwork for his most audacious idea, that each possibility of light could correspond to a different reality. Light ceases to be mere illumination. It becomes a message. The universe is not linear, not one-directional, not submissive. It behaves as if aware of paths yet undiscovered. What we perceive as irregularity is, in fact, a conversation between overlapping worlds. Thus, this chapter closes with a certainty. Light is not a passive phenomenon, but an act of cosmic communication. Through its curves and shadows, nature whispers a truth that the human mind is only beginning to hear. Reality does not bend to us. We must learn to see how it bends to itself. For centuries, we believed that light was obedient, that it followed simple and predictable paths. Yet the experiments of David Deutsch revealed something radical. Light not only illuminates, it also communicates with versions of itself in other worlds. What began with a single torch now ends here, in an experiment that defies all logic. The four-slit experiment. Imagine a beam of light directed towards a thin metallic plate, pierced with 4 perfectly aligned openings. Behind it stands a white screen, patiently waiting to receive the light. If light were made only of particles, we would see 4 distinct bright lines. If it behaved purely as a wave, they would merge smoothly into one another. But what actually appears refuses to fit within either classical explanation. the screen displays a complex pattern of light and shadow that belongs to no known geometry. At the center emerges a region completely dark, the X point, where, according to all logic, light should exist. This darkness is not the absence of light, but the result of interference between invisible beams. Deutsch explains that the only way to understand such behavior is to accept that visible light, the light of our world, interacts with light coming from parallel universes. Each photon that passes through the slits does not choose a single route. It takes every possible path at once. In one universe, it goes through the first slit. In another, through the second, the third, or the fourth. When those versions overlap, they interfere with one another, producing zones of reinforcement and zones of cancellation. Where they coincide, brightness intensifies. Where they nullify, perfect darkness is born. The mysterious X point. This idea is not poetry. It is the most coherent description of what quantum laws truly reveal. The pattern visible upon the screen is the result of tangible and intangible photons acting together. The visible ones belong to our universe. The invisible, the ghosts, as Deutsch calls them, belong to neighboring worlds. Their mutual interference forms figures that no single world could ever create on its own. For many years, classical physics tried to explain these patterns using mere probabilities. It was said that each photon had a certain chance of passing through any given slit, and that the resulting image was simply the sum of those probabilities. Deutsch shattered that view. Those possibilities are not mathematical fictions. They are realities. Each equation describes worlds that genuinely exist. What we see upon the screen is the visible trace of their collective interference. Figures 2.6 and 2.7 illustrate this revelation. First, the configuration of the experiment with its four slits, and then the final interference pattern, with the central dark X point. That point is not an error. It is the shadow of another world, the visible proof that the tangible universe is being influenced by invisible ones. Deutsch reminds us that light does not behave strangely. What is strange is that we ever expected it to behave otherwise. The universe never promised to obey human logic. What we call reality is not a single stage, but a superposition of countless worlds acting at once. Every photon, every particle, every thought may exist in multiple versions, coexisting and affecting one another. When we look upon this pattern, we realize we are not witnessing a mere experiment. We are observing the multiverse reflected upon a wall. Each luminous stripe is confirmation that parallel worlds are not imagination, but structure. Every shadow is a conversation between realities. The visible and the invisible are intertwined like the notes of a cosmic symphony. Deutsch insists that quantum physics is not a science of probability, but of simultaneity. Nothing happens in a single universe. Everything happens in many, and the interference between them is what we perceive as matter, energy, and experience. The X point is not the absence of light. It is displaced light, shifted into another version of reality. A dark band here could be a brilliant one elsewhere. Between the lines of that luminous pattern lies a deeper truth. Every act of observation is also an act of creation. Deutsch explains that the universe is not passively waiting to be seen. It responds, adjusts, and resonates with each inquiry we make. The observer and the observed are inseparable, bound by a dialogue older than time itself. Light becomes both messenger and mirror, revealing that to look is to participate. In every interference pattern, we are not spectators, but contributors, shaping the harmony that echoes across multiple worlds. each reflection completing the cosmic score. Through this experiment, Deutsch concludes that physics ceases to be the study of the visible and becomes the science of the invisible in action. Light reveals that everything we believe to be unique is, in truth, a symphony of coexisting versions. And within that crossing of worlds, within that silent dialogue between tangible beams and spectral counterparts, reality unveils its deepest secret. There is not a single universe, but an infinite network of realities, each reflecting the others in eternal resonance. The experiment with the four slits revealed something that forever changes our understanding of the cosmos. Reality is not singular, it is plural. David Deutsch knew this. If light can interfere with itself, then there must be more than one source of light. If a photon can travel along several paths at once, those paths must exist somewhere. And that place where all paths are fulfilled is what we call the multiverse. In 1957, the physicist Hugh Everett III proposed the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He argued that every time a quantum interaction occurs, the universe divides into parallel versions. One where the electron passes through the first slit, another where it passes through the second. Both exist simultaneously, even though we can only perceive one. His idea was dismissed for decades, considered too extravagant, but David Deutsch revived it and transformed it into a complete explanation of reality itself. According to him, quantum theory does not predict possibilities. It describes real, coexisting universes. The interferences seen in the laboratory are visible proof of that invisible multiplicity. The dark X point in the experiment is not an anomaly, but the footprint of other worlds that influence our own. Deutsch classifies them as tangible universes, those we can perceive, and ghost universes, invisible yet equally real. Both follow the same physical laws and continuously affect one another. The visible light we observe is only one side of the dialogue. The other comes from those ghostly realms that remain hidden. What is extraordinary is that tangibility is not a property of the universe, but of the observer. What is real for you may be invisible to another you. Each version of ourselves lives within its own universe, perceiving the others only as distant echoes. Deutsch illustrates this with characteristic irony. Many of those Davids are writing these words right now. Some are doing it better than others. One has just stood up to make a cup of tea. That line contains a monumental insight. There exist countless versions of us, all acting, thinking, deciding, and evolving. Nothing within classical physics can explain this. To deny parallel universes simply because we cannot see them is like denying the wind because we cannot see air move. The bright and dark fringes from the experiment are not poetic metaphors. They are physical messages from worlds brushing against each other. Interference is literally a conversation between realities. When we observe those bright and dark bands, we are not just seeing light. We are witnessing the handshake between universes. Each oscillation, each pulse, is a silent dialogue across the fabric of existence. Deutsch often remarked that physics is not about discovering isolated facts, but about recognizing that truth vibrates between possibilities. In every interference pattern, we glimpse the invisible harmony connecting what we call separate worlds. The positivists and instrumentalists rejected such conclusions. They claimed that physics should limit itself to predicting outcomes, not explaining what truly exists. But the experiment contradicted that narrow view. The evidence was clear. Each streak of light and each shadow was the trace of something occurring simultaneously across many planes of existence. Deutsch redefines the map of what is real. The multiverse, he says, is the total structure of existence, a vast network of universes, all real, all governed by the same laws, diverging whenever something changes, yet never fully disconnected. Every choice, every interaction opens a new path, and that path becomes a universe of its own. When you decide to speak or remain silent, to stay or to leave, the cosmos branches, and both versions of you continue to exist, unfolding their stories in parallel. This does not destroy free will. It amplifies it. Each version of you makes authentic decisions within its respective world. There are no mere copies, only genuine ramifications of being. The I is not a single entity, but a family of existences sharing a common quantum origin. Deutsch takes it even further. Consciousness does not create reality. It navigates through its versions. The mind does not collapse the universe, as early quantum interpreters once believed. It simply experiences one particular strand within the total fabric. To see, to decide, to remember. These are ways of traveling across that infinite web. We are explorers adrift in an ocean of overlapping worlds. In this view, quantum physics ceases to be a cold mathematical abstraction and becomes a spiritual revelation. It tells us that the invisible is not emptiness but fullness, that what we call chance is merely the reflection of simultaneous pathways, that every particle, thought, and action forms part of a universal choreography. Imagine an infinite mirror where every reflection shows a different version of you. Some smiling, others doubting, others already walking away. Each reflection is a complete universe with its own laws, its own time, its own destiny. And together they form a single vast architecture, the multiverse. For David Deutsch, that network is not theory but physical reality. Experiments confirm it. Mathematics supports it. Logic makes it inevitable. The multiverse is the foundation upon which everything occurs. The visible and the invisible, the possible and the impossible. Accepting the multiverse does not destroy the idea of purpose. It expands it. It shows us that the universe is not a solitary stage, but a symphony of interacting worlds. Each world is a note in an endless melody. Each life, a different interpretation of the same theme. Deutsch's message is clear. There is no single version of reality, nor a single version of you. Every choice opens a universe, and in all of them, some part of you keeps advancing, learning, and seeking. What science calls superposition is, at its core, the expression of the limitless potential of existence itself. And perhaps that is the most profound consequence of Deutsch's vision, that existence itself is participatory. Every observation, every decision, sends a subtle wave rippling across the multiverse. Reality is not a stage fixed in advance, but a living composition. Each mind, each photon, each breath becomes part of the same unfolding equation. A reminder that to exist is to collaborate in the creation of everything. The X point of the experiment is no longer just a shadow. It is a window. A reminder that beyond what we see, there exists a cosmos unfolding, communicating, and breathing alongside us. Quantum physics is the language of that expanded universe, and the multiverse, its true voice. Light revealed something few could accept. When we try to observe it, it stops behaving as it did before. In interference experiments, the simple act of measuring destroys the very pattern we are trying to understand. Reality seems to fold back under the gaze. David Deutsch explains that this phenomenon does not occur because the universe fears observation, but because observation interrupts the quantum conversation between worlds. When light passes through several slits without being measured, the parallel universes cooperate. Photons from each realm interfere with one another, creating the luminous bands we see. But if we attempt to determine which slit each photon goes through, the interference vanishes. The invisible dissolves. The multiverse stops manifesting. This fragility of quantum interference shows that to see does not always mean to understand. For decades, the instrumentalists and positivists ruled science with a narrow vision. If it cannot be measured, it does not exist. They reduced physics to a machine for making predictions, but in doing so, they left out what mattered most: understanding. Hugh Everett and David Deutsch challenged that orthodoxy. Everett proposed that every possible outcome truly occurs, even if we cannot perceive it. Deutsch demonstrated that this view is not philosophical excess, but a requirement to explain quantum interference. From that challenge emerges what Deutsch calls the physics of the invisible, a science that does not settle for observation, but seeks to comprehend what happens beyond the reach of the eye. Observation, instead of revealing truth, can destroy it. That is why the true purpose of knowledge is not to measure, but to understand. Deutsch insists that to predict without understanding is like listening to a melody without knowing the notes that compose it. The universe does not ask to be measured. It asks to be interpreted. Equations gain meaning only when they reflect a deep comprehension of what cannot be seen. To look deeper, then, is not to conquer mystery, but to coexist with it. The act of observing should expand wonder, not reduce it to numbers. Every measurement reveals less than the silence between results, where reality hides its truest form. And in that comprehension, science and wisdom converge. The human mind recognizing that mystery is not an obstacle, but an essential part of truth itself. If every photon has versions of itself in other worlds, what about us? David Deutsch suggests that the multiverse explains not only matter, but also the very nature of our existence. Every choice, every thought, every gesture leaves its echo in other realities. We are not a single story. We are a constellation of versions coexisting in silence. The multiverse is not an abstract idea. It is the stage upon which the totality of being unfolds. While one version of you reads these words, another looks towards a different horizon, and another may not yet have been born. All of them exist. All form part of the same cosmic symphony. The consciousness you experience here is only one current within that infinite ocean. Every conscious moment, however brief, is a bridge between realities. Awareness flickers like light itself, appearing, vanishing, and reappearing, proving that existence is an endless rhythm of becoming. Deutsch states that quantum physics reveals more than laws. It reveals the profound unity of the real. There is no true division between the visible and the invisible, between what happens and what could happen. Each universe reflects the others like opposing mirrors, endlessly multiplying the light. Every decision opens a path and, at the same time, illuminates the rest. Hugh Everett had already intuited it. If the cosmos divides with every interaction, then to live is to create universes. It is not about imagining clones, but about understanding that existence itself expands with every conscious choice. Your actions are never lost. They resonate through the quantum fabric that binds all worlds together. In this vision, spirituality and science cease to oppose each other. The first seeks meaning, the second seeks explanation. both meet at the same point: the certainty that the invisible is also part of us. The multiverse is not merely a physical theory. It is a precise metaphor for human consciousness, one that reflects, multiplies, and evolves through every possibility. Perhaps the true purpose of knowledge is not to master the universe, but to recognize oneself within it. We are both the observers and the observed, the light and the shadow of the same pattern. Through every reflection, the universe contemplates its own image. It learns through us, feels through us, and continues expanding through the countless stories that together compose the living fabric of reality. Each life is a mirror, and in every reflection, distant or near, another version of you continues to exist, exploring, understanding, and seeking the same truth, that everything is connected. And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.